So welcome, everybody. Thank you for being here. This was just kind of a very casually planned, like, hey, let's just try this. I have to actually give credit to War Resisters League in a way, because they talked about doing something and then didn't. I mean, they're working on October 7th for the anniversary of the war in Afghanistan, but they talked about doing something today and then let it go because they didn't get a whole big response. And I thought, well, what the heck, let's just set a date and time. I talked to Ryan about it, and so here we are. So I'm very grateful for the people who are here, and I see Joe Durr. Joe, I didn't know you were joining us. Welcome.
Greetings.
And everybody else, I'm happy to see people that I actually don't know, because that's always nice to reach out to new people. I'm Rosemary Pace. I was the director of Pax Christi Metro New York for 20 years. I retired last year. And I now have this dubious title of co-coordinator of Pax Christi New York State with Ryan DeCorpo. We're still trying to figure out what that means. It's brand new. It's an idea that Johnny Zakovich, who's Pax Christi USA executive director, has for every state in the country. But it's so new that, right now I feel like all I am is a title and a Facebook page. If you haven't signed on to Pax Christi New York State's Facebook page, I will say what I don't put in writing. Basically, what used to be on the Pax Christi Metro New York Facebook page is now on the Pax Christi New York State Facebook page, because I'm the one who did that Facebook page. So I just moved it over to New York State, since I'm not the director of Metro New York anymore. And for anybody who isn't too familiar with Pax Christi, let me just say it means peace of Christ in Latin. It began at the end of World War II, when Latin was the language of the Catholic Church, pretty much the only language of the Catholic Church. And it began for reconciliation between France and Germany. And it is now across the globe. Pax Christi International is in Belgium now, actually, not France. And it's here in the United States, celebrating its 50th anniversary next year. Hopefully able to do it in person. I think the location is still unknown, but we're really hoping that it will be live and just a wonderful celebration. Metro New York, Pax Christi is the obviously metropolitan area of New York, and that includes the Brooklyn Diocese and the Archdiocese, defined by diocese. So it's all of New York City and several counties above. And all of Pax Christi, whether New York or anywhere, the United States, Italy, Belgium, Democratic Republic of the Congo, we really are, and all continents except Antarctica. All of us use prayer, study, and action as the modus operandi of Pax Christi. And so today is a day for prayer. I wouldn't call it study, maybe some action at some point. I understand it's actually considered a day for doing kind of charitable actions. That's one of the parts of the way to recognize the day. I did want to just mention too that when 9/11 happened 20 years ago, when the attacks happened 20 years ago, we were among the first to respond with a statement. We put out a special newsletter issue. We had prayer services. We had a mass with Father Dan Berrigan at the time, no longer with us. We marched, we joined other organizations, and over again, our cry, like so many others, was for a non-military response, for a diplomatic response, for what was I going to say besides that? For following international law. And unfortunately, we know the country didn't do that. So anyway, here we are. And because we are Pax Christi, I did want to start with prayer. And I may even try to do a screen share. I don't know if I can do this, but I'm going to give it a shot and see. My goodness, I can't tell what any of this stuff is. That's weird. Maybe I won't waste the time trying to screen share, because what's showing up is not what I have open. I don't know why. And since I'm not the greatest on technology, I'll just read. This things that I chose are from, well, actually, two of them are from a prayer service that we had done for 9/11 way back when. The call to prayer is from Thomas Merton, and I always feel kind of explains why turn to prayer for those of us who are people of faith, religious faith. Prayer and sacrifice must be used as the most effective spiritual weapons in the war against war. And like all weapons, they must be used with deliberate aim, not just with a vague aspiration for peace and security, but against violence and aggressiveness in our relations with other people. We may never succeed in this campaign, but whether we succeed or not, the duty is evident. And there is the prayer from Ground Zero that actually Pope Benedict XVI prayed when he was there in person. O God of love, compassion, and healing, look on us, people of many different faiths and traditions who gather today to commemorate a time of incredible violence and pain. We ask you in your goodness to give eternal light and peace to all who died, the heroic first responders, our firefighters, police officers, emergency service workers, and Port Authority personnel, along with all the innocent men and women who were victims of this tragedy, simply because their work or service brought them together on September 11th, 2001. We ask you in your compassion to bring healing to those who, because of their presence that day, suffer from injuries and illness. Heal to the pain of still grieving families and all who lost loved ones in this tragedy. Give them strength to continue their lives with courage and hope. God of peace, bring your peace to our violent world, peace in the hearts of all men and women, and peace among the nations of the earth. Turn to your way of love those whose hearts and minds are consumed with hatred. God of understanding, overwhelmed by the magnitude of this tragedy, we seek your light and guidance as we confront such terrible events. Grant that those whose lives were spread may live so that the lives lost may not have been lost in vain. Comfort and console us, strengthen us in hope, and give us the wisdom and courage to work tirelessly for a world where true peace and love reign among nations and in the hearts of all. Amen.
Amen.
And so, as I had written in my emails, this is really meant to be just a sharing among us. So I am going to look at my list and see who I have here. Ryan, would you like to start us off?
Sure. And just for some people who maybe weren't on the call when we began, I am Ryan DeCorpo. I am, along with Rosemarie, the new co-coordinator for Pax Christi New York State, which we are trying to more specifically define and get off the ground. And I thank everybody for being here. Obviously, this is a difficult day every year, but I think especially this year, as we've seen kind of the fruits of 20 years of war and where that's gotten us. You know, I was 4 years old when 9/11 happened. I don't have firsthand memory of it. It was my first day of preschool. But I've always looked at it as having been an awfully violent, incomprehensibly tragic opportunity for conversion. It was a moment where people had an opportunity to not only reject militarism, but to reject violence, to become more unified. And in some sense, we did. There were incredible acts of compassion and unity all across the country, but especially in New York City, when people came together to help rescue survivors and you know, just help put New York City back together. But that focus very quickly turned from the victims and their families left behind to a call for war.
Yep.
And it did so almost immediately. And I think rather than immediately rush toward that, gave us an opportunity to look at the fruits of violence and all of its horror and all of its brutality and reject those methods going forward. It's impossible to say 20 years later what a non-violent or a non-military solution to what response to 9/11 would have looked like, where we would be now. But we do have to ask ourselves 20 years later, after decades of war, and after seeing what the military response was, if we're more unified as a people, if we're in a better place than we were before, if we're safer, and if we're a more peaceful nation. And those are difficult questions to ask. I want to read a brief passage from a reflection written in the immediate aftermath of 9/11 by theologian Stanley Hauerwas, who for years taught at Duke Divinity School and is known as a Christian pacifist and has kind of broad appeal outside of just academia. He wrote, "Pacifists are often challenged after an event like September 11th was the question, well, what alternative do you have to bombing Afghanistan? Such a question assumes that pacifists must have an alternative foreign policy. My response is I do not have one. I have something better, a church constituted by people who would rather die than kill." He writes, "Christians are not called to be heroes or shoppers. We are called to be holy. We do not think holiness is an individual achievement, but rather a set of practices to sustain a people who refuse to have their lives determined by the fear and denial of death. We do so, we believe by so living, we offer our non-Christian brothers and sisters an alternative to all politics based on denial of death. Christians are acutely aware that we are seldom faithful to the gifts God has given us, but we hope the confession of our sins is a sign of hope in a world without hope. This means pacifists do have a response to September 11th. Our response is to continue living in a manner that witnesses to our belief that the world was not changed on September 11th. The world was changed during the celebration of Passover in 33 AD. I'd just like to invite reflections on what Stanley Hauerwas said and any other comments that people might have as we remember the people who were lost today. Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. Adam, would you like to go next?
Self there. Thank you. I'm Adam Carroll. I'm in the Muslim community of New York City, mostly working on human rights issues. After 9/11, was very intensively involved in recovery and disaster mitigation. And I do recall the sense of sacred in serving those who are in crisis. And, the Quran speaks in Surah Al-Asr, it speaks of, surely mankind is in a state of loss, except for those who do good works, have faith, do righteous deeds, and join together in the mutual, I just got out of my thing, join together in mutual teaching of truth, patience, and constancy. So I wanted just to read a poem. It's kind of a doggerel poem that I wrote last night. In the name of God, we call for mercy as infection spreads. Technology makes its home in all our heads, seeming to leave so little room. But as for time, here we are again. What does it mean? After all is said and done, we've circled 20 times around the sun and arrived just where we started from. But no, something's missing. It's rather odd. That something gone is never God, who is and ever shall be. But it is I and you. We cannot see the vanished friends, the faded face, nor feel the lost embrace except in dream. Much time has passed. And still they come, the children and the yet still young, intent upon what's possible, but also whirling round the sun in vast migration to be done with miles to go before they sleep. The sins of the cities of the plain are unlimited, and ours the pain. We turn and toss. What once seemed terror now seems symptom of a deeper loss. Dear city and dear world, an evil star once crashed among us, visiting from a disastrous universe that you and I create. Rather than simply blaming hate, we could find a way to witness and appreciate that what's above us may be below. Supply chains now are growing tight, so workers of the world unite. Don't fight. Communion comes to us through seeing. We're linked in love, great chain of being.
Thank you, Adam. And Ellen, Sister Ellen. Ellen, you're muted.
You mean Evelyn?
No, Ellen, who is under my name because I sent her my link.
Thank you. Here I am. I'd just like to thank Adam for his words. They're pretty much on the length of what I am about today. As one wishing for peace and working for peace, I also cannot ignore the great gift that we received in the outpouring of compassion shown by so many people at the time of the fall of the towers, but also for now, and especially this year, not just 20 years, it's somehow connected with the pandemic and how we are all suffering those losses. We're suffering a lot of losses. And Rosemary, interestingly enough, I also chose that same prayer that you had. It has a personal note for us because one of our sisters wrote it, Janet Baxendale, who has also passed away in the last few months. And I look at the last verse and just part of it to reiterate that sense of compassion that we can learn from as we hear stories repeated, but also when we live it again through this pandemic. And this is the prayer: God of understanding, overwhelmed by the magnitude of this tragedy, we seek your light and guidance as we confront such terrible events. Grant that those whose lives were spared may live, so that the lives lost here may not have been lost in vain. Comfort and console us, strengthen us in hope, and give us the wisdom and courage to work tirelessly for a world where true peace and love reign among nations and in the hearts of all of us. Amen.
Amen. Amen.
Tom Casey.
There we go. I had to unmute myself. This may not work. If there's background noise where I am, it's the only place I can get reception. So is my voice coming through okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, good. What I wanted just to note is the 9/11 Families for Peaceful Tomorrows. I've always been aware of them, but in the recent 2 years, they have joined a coalition against torture it's over 20 organizations that have focused on lobbying, pressuring Bush and appointees to close Guantanamo. And the group came out of my participation for years with Witness Against Torture. But I just find the 9/11 families incredible. They have their film series going on right now. Colleen Kelly was one of the panelists a couple nights ago. And I'm so thankful to have become aware of that community, and I'm very thankful to be part of this community. I'm going to read something from Rabbi Waskow that I've always found inspiring. It's called the Sukkah in the World Trade Center. When the Jewish community celebrates the Harvest Festival, we build a sukkah. What is a sukkah? Just a fragile hut with a leafy roof, the most vulnerable of houses, vulnerable in time where it lasts for only a week each year, vulnerable in space where its roof must not only be leafy, but leaky, letting in the starlight, gusts of wind and rain. Why a sukkah? Precisely because the sukkah is so vulnerable. For each of our lives, we have tried to achieve peace and safety by building with steel and concrete and toughness. We are in truth all vulnerable. If a hard rains are going to fall, it will fall on all of us. Americans have felt invulnerable. However, the planet is in fact one interwoven web of life. The command to love my neighbor as I do myself is not an admonition to be nice, it is a statement of truth, like the law of gravity. For my neighbor and myself are interwoven. If I pour contempt upon my neighbor, hatred will recoil upon me. What is the lesson? When we learn that all of us live in a sukkah, the lesson is that only a world where we all recognize our vulnerability can we become a world where all communities feel responsible to all other communities. And only such a world can prevent such acts of rage and murder. We must open our hearts to ask, have we ourselves had a hand in creating the pain that has taken place? Can we act to lighten it without increasing the overall amount of pain in the world? Instead of entering upon a war of civilizations, we must pursue a planetary peace.
Amen.
I've edited that a little to reduce it, but it's a wonderful reflection. I thought very fortunate to have, it was written a few days after 9/11. Thank you.
Thank you. Margaret.
Okay. My sister is a poet. She lives in Ohio, but has visited New York many times since I moved here in 1972, and had visited the World Trade Towers many times. So she created this poem, which I'd like to share with you. Precious rubble, passed hand to hand by the brave and broken before our very eyes. Fragments of our cities and our bodies and all that we have known. In stunned silence, we realize soon we must choose between boiling hatred and bitterness repaid in kind as we bury body parts in blackened bags of muck. and another option, much, much harder as one choice for its tenderness. Though what I have seen is tearing me to shreds, I gladly bleed the glue of my life force, this unifying nectar, into this earth we share, telling those who never saw them about the towers of tomorrow. They must rebuild from our precious, precious rubble, pillars of peace to hold a night at bay. Her pen name is Shannon Prohar III. If you look on her Facebook page, Mary Kay Land, you might find it.
Thank you. And TK is going to be sharing the screen and hopefully does better at it than I did.
Oh, so I can do now?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. First of all, yeah, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to do the prayer for the from the Buddhist community, or Buddhist teachings, or representing Buddhists at least. And of course, I was actually at the president of the Buddhist Council the 20 years ago. So I have to do a lot of things from the Buddhist, because even like we talk beginning at the Yankee stadium, but then there's a prayer, as people know, but then actually Buddhists were not, no Buddhists were there. So I guess that's one thing that we started. Maybe one thing that reflection was Buddhist is a little bit more quieter side, so maybe we should do something more. So one of the things that I decided to do was kind of a Buddhist way of responding to this 9/11, which is actually the floating lantern ceremony. If you know, or if you ever participate, I'm not too sure, but we started following year, and about 10 years until 2010, continue to have this gathering. So I thought maybe as I do a little prayer, like a bell and then maybe a little chant, I just wanted to show the this part of the floating lantern ceremony. That's the photos that I'm going to share, share screen. Okay, so let me do that. And so because everything is so noisy, so for us, it's more like a quietness or calmness. The peace is very important. So that's why floating lantern ceremony is basically try to create the peace. And then so we normally did at the evening of the 9/11. And so, and because 9/11 itself is so many things going on, so noisy, everything. So after everything is over, maybe we can settle down and seeing the sunset, and then going to the darkness, but yet so our mind can be calm, and then we can pay respect to those who lost their lives. So that's what we did, and I wanted to share some of the pictures that I gathered. And so some of them are 20 years ago. I mean, so I was, 20 years younger, so it looks a little something, but I hope you can enjoy at the same time. And but then you can probably think of some of the parts. And then many people who appear there is also gone too already, so it's in a way, it's a kind of nice way to memorialize this 20th anniversary. So let me just share this. I hope you can see okay. Let me start now. That be able to see?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay, let me start with, sorry. I just wanted to hold it a little bit. Sorry, I wanted to test it and see. Okay, now join me meditation. a peace walk that we have also. And then the ceremony at the ground zero. And this is the first year for the floating lanterns ceremony. And people write the message for peace. And sometimes the name of the people who are lost or who don't know where they went. And this is the interfaith prayer like we are doing now. Or Dean Morton is there too. Yeah. And it's a sunset time, we start with it. And many different organizations supported this thing. So people, yeah, here draw, write. Sometimes children can participate in too. So it was nice to be. But we can't use a real frame, so I have to use the one for the electric light. So different Buddhists all together also. And of course, as I show, interfaith as well. And people of the, for, a lot of people came actually. In the end, like almost 10th year, we had about maybe 1,000 people came. And then there's a kayak people. That's very important. Without a kayaker, we can't do, because we need to take out, bring it back, all the things that float on a river. And we have some musicians join it, and so that's how we did a lantern ceremony. Let me do a little prayer. 主上小被国者会出上少上始重小医者が被国中無償者従業不上十十法語者小仏如来海軍三段無料重仏非人空毒不可思議小宇宙上文豪名号新人歓喜内視一年視新鋭高願小被国即徳合上十風大天唯上五逆秘法小法ナモアミダブナモアミダブナモアミダブ Just wanted to conclude my talk with just one quote from the Dhammapada. This is actually one of the passages I keep reading. Wherever I go, these are the passages. I believe at the Riverside Church also, I read this one. Not exactly the same probably translation, but basically the same. Hatred has never dispelled hate. Absence of hatred leads to peace. This is the eternal rule. And some translation is, instead of absence of hatred, we're talking about compassion and love. So lead to peace. So it's always keep in mind. This passage was one of the messages that I wanted to share even today. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, TK. And Indrajit, please.
It's been 20 years, and over these 20 years, we've had time to reflect on the horrors of war and aggression. And even though the powers that were and the powers that be launched us on this path in the hope that we were going to exact some kind of a vengeance, but the vengeance is on us. We have suffered many times more than those upon whom we wanted to inflict that vengeance. So we pray to God, who is all-knowing, all-powerful, and all-controlling, that please, Almighty, give those who are in power the good sense and judgment and inspiration to know that war is not the answer, that compassion and following in the basic principles of decency and fairness will hopefully lead to better solutions to problems for which we use war and aggression as the answer. So again, my appeal is to the presidents and the generals and those who are actors in this horrible drama. Please, dear God, give them the good sense to follow thy will. Thank you.
Thank you. And Brendan, please share.
Hello, and thank you for creating this space for reflection on this 20th anniversary of 9/11. How extraordinary that 20 years later, here with this technology that we are using for good, and how it is bringing us together to say hello to each other, to be present with each other, to walk a path of nonviolence, of peacemaking, of calling each other to our better selves today. I'm very grateful for each of you for responding today and for letting me share these few moments with you. And I'm very grateful for the movement of Pax Christi and the message. In hard times, in dark time, in the midst of war, to always remind us as human beings that we can never bomb our way to peace. Today, and since 9/11, I wanted to say a few words about my friend, Father Michael Judge, who was chaplain to the fire department. And in a way, as I think of his story and his friendship and his life, which I have a new film coming out called Remembering Michael, in a way, how to keep each of the persons who died, who suffered, who experienced pain, to unwrap their human story so that we always continue to be human with each other and not just a victim or a number, but somebody's daughter, somebody's son. We talk about, and I know Michael Judge had a soft spot for kitchen workers. Always would talk about the kitchen workers. And as I go down there and we pray and remember the first responders and the women and men of the fire department, I know he would sort of be whispering, don't forget the kitchen workers. Once he visited the White House and was with during the Clinton era. And I remember he came back and he wrote me a note and he said, during a break, and it was a gathering of religious leaders, I'll just give you two little stories. He actually the president said, is there anybody that would like to say anything before we all break up? Bishops and religious leaders and all were there gathered. And Michael Judge put up his hand. There he is in his Franciscan habit. And he said, I would like to say something about an American movement called Alcoholics Anonymous, founded by Bill Wilson and Dr. Bob. And then he said, that has done so much good for the world, maybe even as much good as Mother Teresa. And then he said, forgive the comparison. And he said, because it's a movement of spirituality. And then he said, sometimes religions cause war. And of course, you know, Michael Judge loved this movement of Alcoholics Anonymous, where people would gather and share their stories and live life a day at a time, you know, and that's how he lived his life. Every morning, people would ask him, how do you do what you do? How do you work with the homeless? How do you work with people with AIDS? How do you hold on to joy and laughter and humanity in who you are and in what you do? I was telling somebody, even among the homeless, he kept a little notebook because he got their names and their birthdays. And he would meet them on their birthday and bring them for a New York egg and a cup of coffee in one of the Midtown diners, and then bring them out for a pair of sneakers. He kept this list. Almost, it kind of reminds me, after 9/11, I was saying, say hello a little bit more personal. Be a little less rushed and inhuman. Become more human, even with the people on the streets or in the subways. Say hello to my neighbors a little more. And then, of course, people would say to him, how did he do it? And he would say, I get down on my knees every morning and I pray. And his prayer, which now has become known as Michael's prayer, Lord, take me where you want me to go. Let me meet who you want me to meet. Tell me what you want me to say and keep me out of your way. And then, of course, as you know, sometimes I said to people, he had a heart as big as New York. There was room for all of us. I knew him in so many places and spaces. As someone who was an immigrant from Ireland, his parents were from County Leitrim, and he had a soft spot for immigrants, by the way, and was always advocating, especially for immigrants who were living with HIV, because at that time you could be deported simply for being an immigrant who was HIV positive. He was paying rent, he was helping out. And you know, the day before, there was the blessing of the Bronx Firehouse. And among the words he spoke that day, he said in his homily, the day before 9/11, he said, you do what God has called you to do. You show up. You put one foot in front of another. You get on the rig. You go out to do the job, which is a mystery and a surprise. You have no idea. When you get on the rig, no matter how big the call, no matter how small, you have no idea what God is calling you to. How beautiful is that? And that we just get up every morning and we have today, and to make the best of it. And I'll just say Michael Judge, as a Franciscan, as a peacemaker, in a way, in that day of terror and death and darkness, it's like this icon emerged from this pit of hell to remind us of our capacity, not just for terror, but for being bearers of peace and hope and human tenderness for one another. Every year he also went to, by the way, not just an ecumenical gathering. I know Irish Catholics, you know, I said, we had only two types of human beings, Catholics and non-Catholics. What does it mean to be non-violent, to be bearers of peace? It's to be like Michael Judge and to see the sacred in every person, the God of surprises. And that was Michael Judge. He participated every year in a lovely interfaith ceremony in New York City and celebrated the gifts of everyone. And I remember one guy telling me on Flight 800 when it went down, that terrible tragedy. He said that when Michael Judge did the prayer or the mass, he extended an invitation to everyone, Catholics, Protestants, he would say believers, non-believers, Muslims, Jews, atheists. He said that everyone showed up because of Michael Judge and his big heart and the way he brought heaven, God's presence, wherever he went, and then recognized that. So Michael Judge, a lovely story to tell, a man who ministered to so many New Yorkers. And I know one thing he will have us working on. Thank you. I'm writing to politicians today to ask them to divest New York City pension funds from nuclear weapons production, 475 million. Michael Judge died a firefighter. None of them in their name would they want their monies used for war, but for peace, for healthcare, for welcoming refugees and immigrants, and being New York, being the best New Yorkers we can be. But let me say, I am so grateful just to share a couple of minutes with Pax Christi, with each of you, and your own personal dedication today to reminding me to choose peace, to be kinder today and more compassionate, and to say hello to my neighbors with a full heart in memory of our friend, Michael Judge, who witnessed the path of Francis. And wore his Franciscan habit, walked through the streets of New York. He was so proud to be a Franciscan, to be Catholic, and to say that prayer, Lord, make us instruments of your peace. Where there is hatred, let us bring love. Where there is sadness, may we be bearers of hope and joy, you know. And thank you. Thank God for you. Thank God for Michael Judge. And may we remember the immigrants, the kitchen workers, and all that, you know, who are affected still to this day from 9/11. Thank you.
Thank you, Brendan. And you probably know this. I don't remember. I think it was just this week. I think it was an animated film, maybe, that was the source, but there was the question of why was Michael the first to die on 9/11? And the answer really struck me because he could never reach everybody on earth, but from heaven, he could be there to greet everyone that came after him. And wow, was that I'm tearing up just thinking of that. I mean, it was so sad and yet so beautiful to imagine he needed to be there more than he needed to be here. But I always appreciate your extreme love of Michael and your dedication to him. So thank you. And Marion, please join us now. Marion Ronan.
Here I am.
There you are. Okay.
I want to apologize because what I'm going to say, compared to the compassionate and beautiful memories you all have, could be perceived as a little negative. But along with grief for all the lives lost, and I mean, we remember, my husband and I were in the faculty at the Graduate Theological Union on Berkeley on 9/11, and the enormous relief we felt when his son called from Manhattan and said he was all right. So the idea of people losing loved ones is really unbelievable to me, hard to imagine. But I also have to say that one of the things that drives me crazy about the remembrances of 9/11 is just how much gets omitted from the memories of it, you know. And I was quite struck. We've been reading Bob Magritt's book about nuclear war, and he has a chapter on 9/11, and he says, was 9/11 the beginning of a payback? Does anybody realize how many more people were killed at Hiroshima and Nagasaki and in the fire bombings of Germany and Japan at the end of the Second World War? And then yesterday there was a piece in the New York Times by Laila Lalami, who is a Muslim American writer, distinguished writer. And it's called The Real Meaning of Never Forget. And she says, in the United States, September 11th led directly to the creation of the Department of Homeland Security, the passing of the Patriot Act, the authorization of the use of military force, twice I might add, the use of warrantless surveillance programs and special registration of immigrants and foreign students from Muslim countries. Outside the United States, the attack served as justification for the 20-year war in Afghanistan, the invasion and occupation of Iraq, the infinite detention of prisoners at Guantanamo Bay, the use of torture at Abu Ghraib and elsewhere, the killings of thousands of US and foreign service members, the periodic bombing of Pakistan, Yemen, Syria, and Somalia, the deaths of some 800,000 people, including 335,000 civilians, and the displacement of an estimated 38 million people. So in response to that, I'm going to pray the Kyrie eleison. Lord, have mercy on us. Christ, have mercy on us. Lord, have mercy on us. Amen.
And other than me, that was the list I had of people who wanted to share. I'm going to share what I had, which maybe is more in line with Marion's too. But then if anybody else would like to share, even though I didn't have your name ahead of time, I would encourage you to do so. But when I was looking for prayers, I came across a letter I had written apparently on October 16th, 2001 to Catholic New York. And when I reread it, I thought, this is unfortunately pretty much still much of my thinking. The only thing that I would have to change in this letter is that it mentions Thomas Cordaro as chairperson of the National Council of Pax Christi USA, but that was 20 years ago. He is not still the president of Pax Christi's National Council. Other than that, sadly, 20 years later, this is still so relevant. What I wrote was to the editor. In your October issue, you entitled a letter from Susan Anello, Patriotic Feeling. The letter began, I think I now understand why men and women join the military. I didn't know what patriotism was until last Tuesday. End of the quote. This letter struck a nerve in me because I still struggle with the meaning of patriotism. I know that since September 11th, there has been much attention given to it. The media tell us that the large majority of US citizens support our government's military response to the horrific attacks of September 11th. The US flag is visible everywhere, on buildings, vehicles, clothes, everywhere. Strains of patriotic songs ring from our churches, schools, public parks, and private office buildings. But is this patriotism? It has long disturbed me, in particular, to note the equations military service equals patriotism and opposition to militarism equals traitor, that I have heard irresponsibly flung about by those who dismiss nonviolent options to war as naive, if not cowardly. As one who is equally a US American and a peacemaker, I find myself searching for and reflecting on the synthesis of these two identities. Fortunately, I found help in an article by Tom Cordaro, then chairperson of the National Council of Pax Christi USA. In Patriotism in This Time of War, Mr. Cordaro presents 4 principles of American patriotism. The first states that American patriots are committed to the rule of law. This means that we apply international law to the pursuit of justice. The remaining 3 principles address our other great commitments: democracy and human rights, the common good, and the protection of cultural diversity. All of these represent the global nature of our goodness and generosity. Were we to live out these principles in this current conflict, our weapons would be an international court for terrorists and social and economic provisions for the victims worldwide. War would not be an option. Such a patriotism I can embrace. Coincidentally, I would like to emphasize the compatibility of these principles and Catholic social teaching, where the dignity of the human person, community, and the common good, option for the poor, and solidarity characterize who we are as people of faith. These teachings emerge directly from the lessons of Jesus in the Gospels. Should government policies and practices contradict these values of God and country, we must stay on the side of our God, who commands us not to kill, but to love our enemies and forgive those who trespass against us. No exceptions, not even just war theory, which does not come from Jesus, but from St. Augustine in the 4th century when the church was becoming a political institution. Whether following Jesus is patriotic or not, may he be our guide. The cross assures me he was neither naive nor cowardly. His resurrection assures the only victory worth having. And so I invite anybody else who might like to share who hasn't.
Rosemary, can I share my story?
Sure.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Rachel Clark. I'm a member of Organization for Veterans for Peace. 2 years ago, September 11 was the longest day of my life. Long story short, my ex-husband was working on tower number 1. So was his younger brother and our next door neighbor. Our next door neighbor's husband. Thank God my ex-husband came back alive, but we lost his younger brother and the next door neighbor's husband. Just by coincidence, my brother-in-law had a Japanese wife, and between them they had 4 children, 11, 9, 7, and 5 years old. January 1st and 2nd, 2 consecutive days, one of the major newspaper companies in Japan featured my brother-in-law's family. Of course, I've read the contents and surprised that what they've written was totally different from what I've known from inside. So September 11 was a kind of turning point for me to doubt what media reports. And also September 11 was the turning point when we, as a citizen of the United States, gave up our privacy. Also, our government turned their gear toward war. Through my job as interpreter, I was given the opportunity in 2015 for 3 weeks. My client, a journalist from Japan, and I traveled across the United States interviewing veterans of Vietnam wars, veterans of Iraq war and Afghan war. My conclusion from this job was, oh my God, they are also victims of war. Many of them said that 9/11 was turning point. As I explained before, yes, it was a huge turning point. Since then, our military budget increased dramatically. And now I would like to say so sorry for those children who lost their parents and guardians in 9/11, and also those children who lost their guardians and parents in Afghanistan and Iraq and other areas of Middle East and Africa where we bombed and killed. Just because we lost about 3,000 people, that doesn't mean that we are entitled to kill more millions of people. This is ridiculous. And I'm so sorry for those people who lost their family members. As a citizen of the United States, I would like to apologize for not being able to prevent this horrific series of events. 9/11 is one day of the year for many people, but for me and probably all of you, every single day is 9/11 since 20 years ago. And I think we have a long ways to, a long way go in front of us. But I would like to suggest one idea that I came to my mind a couple weeks ago. There's many organizations, something for peace, like Veterans for Peace, Musicians for Peace, Scientists for Peace. And I hope we can come up with bankers for peace. Individual bankers or banks as an entities, we would like to encourage them to form bankers for peace. I want them to be proud of not to finance or lend money to warmongers, not finance or lend money to weapon companies, any kind of corporations who are related to wars and killing people. So I think in order to encourage them, being a member of Bankers for Peace is a big sign that that's a safe place to leave our money, right? So right now I don't have time or energy to start up a new project because I've always have so many projects in my basket. But if you are interested in, let's start talking about this new organization, Bankers for Peace. And this is I believe this is one of the greatest idea to separate money from wars or separate money from any kind of military industrial complex to even more flourish. This is unbelievable. And lastly, I would like to suggest one idea, one concept that we should know. Everybody of us should know, that is nuclear energy used in satellites. This is something we all should be aware of. 2017, on the floor of United Nations, during the time of the discussion to create nuclear ban treaty, I was there and listening to every single representative's speech. It was a huge disappointment when the representative of Switzerland said that we should leave the right to pursue, right to use nuclear for peaceful purposes, okay? Which means that nuclear energy is, it doesn't, the new law, international law does not apply to nuclear energy. So right now, even Elon Musk's company alone, 4,600 satellites up now already. And in the long run, he is trying to shoot up more than 40,000 satellites to outer space, his company alone. So it's going to be many, many more satellites up there. And think about it. Those satellites are right now using a lot of elements to to destroy ozone layers. So we need to stop it. And also the nuclear energy to keep the satellite going is also dangerous. And we should not be able to use those dangerous material in outer space, and that should be regulated internationally. And so I would like to suggest 2 regulations: to stop using nuclear energy for satellites and start up Bankers for Peace. And thank you for listening.
Thank you. And anyone else?
I just put in the chat an announcement for an upcoming event. And it kind of, in some ways, speaks to what Rachel was just talking about. Corporate responsibility, or rather the military-industrial complex complicity with war and conflict. Also, since the UN is rightfully making the climate and climate change more of a focus the General Assembly is coming together. There will be COP26, various conferences, hopefully. And yet, military is being made an exception to some of those regulations. And that is something that needs more attention. So Code Pink, which I'm not a member of, but I work with, is organizing this event, which is a walk of shame, visiting various corporations near the UN. Of course, there are many others, Raytheon, Boeing, General Dynamics, as you know, as well as companies overseas in other countries that are keeping the war machine going. So it does need attention, and I hope everyone here will be able to join the event on the 21st. Thanks for letting me announce it.
Rosemary,
Yes,
it's Doretta. I just want to say that in line with that, the fall assembly is going to be, I can't remember the man's name, I'm terrible, but the speaker, one of his major focuses, topics that he writes about and preaches about is military and economic and the environmental, the effect of the military actions on, and the concentration of funds on the effects on our environment and climate change and all that. So that's coming up.
do you have the date, Doretta?
I think it's October 23rd. I don't have it with me. I'm on the wrong computer.
I think it is too.
Yeah,
I think
October 23rd, and it'll be Zoom.
It's a Saturday, yeah.
Yes, it's a Saturday. It'll be Zoom. We're just doing the final touches with him, of time and all that sort of thing.
Mhm.
So that'll be out soon, very soon. We're working on the flyer now. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And again, anyone else? Yeah, Terrence.
Well, hi. Just a brief thought. We can all learn from the past naturally, and we all do. Events can't be changed; they're written. But what we do have is today and how we act in order to shape our future. And very important resource are the young people that we interact with. I see most of us, or many of us, are probably above 30, but we do interact with those who are much younger, anywhere from single digits up, particularly through the 30s, who may not remember the devastation of 9/11, or maybe the years before that as well. So even just in the small ways that we can model, maybe saying thank you, please, you're welcome, or just by suggesting things that younger people can do to improve the world and guide the world, because after all, they are our future. And if we are to shape the future, I guess in a practical sense, we're not going to be around forever. And those who follow us, it's going to be very important what type of perspective they have on what type of world they will want to live in. So I thank you very much for just a second or two to speak, and for this gathering, which means, I know it means so much to me and so many other people. So thank you all for your thoughts.
Thank you. And Pax Christi USA is really trying to focus on young adults, and that's Ryan is part of that, Ryan DeCorpo, who was probably our youngest person here. As he said, all of 4 years old when this happened 20 years ago, first day of preschool. Pretty amazing. Ryan, do you want to say anything about the Young Adult Caucus?
Yes, so I'm also proud, and I know that Muhammad has raised his hand, so I want to go to him in a second. But I'm also proud of the Pax Christi Young Adult Caucus, which is for members between the ages of 18 and I think 30 to 35, which is a national group under Pax Christi USA. And we gather once every month or so and discuss different topics related to nonviolence, nuclear disarmament, racism, climate change, and how they intersect with nonviolence. So this is a group that has probably 15, 20 or so people, and it tends to grow each time we have a meeting. Right now it's run by Anna Killian, and Bob Shine and Lauren Bailey, who's part of the national conference, is also part of the group. So that's one of the ways that Pax Christi USA is trying to draw younger people into the fold.
And Mohammed, don't want to leave you out. Eager to hear from you.
Hi, thank you to all for giving me this opportunity. And I am remembering 20 years before that incident happened, and lots of people, innocent people, died without any reason. As a Muslim, I want to say that in Islam, there is no place in the name of terrorism or you kill innocent people without any reason. So I strongly condemn that kind of barbaric attack to the innocent people. Now these days, actually, if you see after since 2001 till now, or after World War II, the Muslim world, those people are ruling the world, especially in Arab, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Kuwait, those regimes, they keep power. There is no democracy. People have no rights, human rights. That is the gap between the poor and rich. So my honesty request, if you want to bring peace, you need to work in the root level, that what is the problem in the Muslim world. Innocent people, they are not the doing any kinds of misconduct or abuse of power. They are innocent, but they are like me. My first name is Muhammad, and if you labelize me, I am not a good human. It's not true. Main problem is that rulers and the regimes are corrupt. They are violating human rights. So we need to work together world, that in the Muslim world, everywhere need to get democracy, human rights, tolerance. You need to give space to the other people. You need to listen. You need to create equality among the poor and rich in the society. So then in that way, and you need to bring justice for everybody, then you will get peace in Muslim world and other part of the world. So if you fight and you are doing, you killing innocent, but you are supporting indirectly to the rulers. So it's a double standard. So we need to bring a real motion against the rulers, not the innocent people in the Muslim world. So my honesty request, if you have any way, like I'm from Bangladesh, I need to say my country, the country ruler, they are ruling the government since 2009 without any vote. So if you say anything against the government, you will be in jail or human rights violation. They put a level, oh, you are a terrorist, you are saying something against the government. So main thing is that international community need to bring a platform that what's going on other part of the world. You see millions of people are displaced from home. They did nothing. They are the innocent Rohingya refugees. They are also in my country, 1 million. You see many millions of Syrian, Iraqi, Libyan, all over the world, they are refugees. They don't have house. But the elite rulers, the politicians, corporations, they are the suckers of the blood. So we need to bring a resolution immediately to bring world peace, harmony for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. One of the things I'm most grateful for that came out of the ashes, you might say, of 9/11 was a lot of interfaith opportunities. I think that's how I met Adam. We had the Metro New York Religious Campaign Against Torture, and then the Children of Abraham Peace Walk in Brooklyn that was founded by Debbie Almantasser, who's Muslim, and Rabbi Ellen Lipman, who's Jewish. And actually tonight at 8:30, they are hosting a peace vigil on Zoom that is kind of an anniversary Children of Abraham walk, but virtual. And then we started a Queens Interfaith walk, and Queens Interfaith Council now exists. So the fact is, I don't think I knew a Muslim or a Sikh or maybe even a Buddhist or a Hindu before 9/11, 2001. And now I feel very, very close to many of those people, including somebody who works for Afghan Women and is working tirelessly right now with the evacuation of Afghan people looking for safe refuge. So there were some awakenings that came because of something so terrible. And again, I'm grateful for that. And I always like to share one story that I think is kind of amusing. At the time, Pax Christi Metro New York, and I was already director then, Pax Christi Metro New York was in Washington Square United Methodist Church on West 4th Street in Greenwich Village. And I didn't get to the office on 9/11. I hadn't been there yet, and I was told don't come. And then we weren't allowed to go below 14th Street for, I don't know, a week or so. I don't remember how long. But once we were back, and we had a very close relationship with Washington Square United Methodist Church. We were really colleagues and very equally engaged in nonviolent responses to 9/11. Well, that church became the recipient of an abundance, that's not even an adequate word, of teddy bears. Teddy bears were coming in from, I think, every child outside of New York in the country. And after a while, they had no place to put these teddy bears. And they were saying, Rosemary, can we put the teddy bears in the Pax Christi office? So I had teddy bears in the office, and they had teddy bears, and they were like coming out of the windows. And what are we going to do with all these teddy bears? And eventually just started to give them out to the homeless people, because there were lots of homeless people around. And sometime later, quite a bit later, I wouldn't be surprised, I don't remember now, but maybe it was months later, a year later, a woman comes to the door. And I don't remember what she was looking for, whether she was looking for a meal or money or a Bible. Very often they came by, they wanted a Bible, a homeless woman. And tucked under her elbow was one of those teddy bears. Those teddy bears meant something to people, even if they were adults, homeless people. It was very, very touching. And I was also quite amused, and I guess still am. But as I think I heard on TV last night, it was kind of, it wasn't said this way, but to quote Charles Dickens, the worst of times and the best of times. It was a time of hatred, but a time of tremendous community and people coming together in very positive ways. Unless somebody has something else you want to share, I do have a little closing. I'll call it a prayer. It's more like a commitment that we can use. But I wanted to just add to a couple of things that were already said about upcoming events. I guess the next one is September 19th. There's an event at Foley Square called Rising Together, which is supposed to be connecting the dots for peace, nonviolence, social justice. I'm not directly part of it, so I don't have all the details, but it's the whole afternoon in Foley Square. I think it's also going to be live streamed, so you could stay in the safety of your home from COVID and possibly follow along. Adam just shared September 21st with us from Code Pink. Actually, there are things, the 17th, the 18th, the 19th, the 20th, the 21st, as far as I know. I can't even tell you what all of them are. There is something going on like every day that weekend, long weekend, extended almost a week. September 25th, I can tell you about. It'll be another Zoom event similar to this, specifically an interfaith prayer for the total elimination of nuclear weapons. Technically, September 26th is that date, but we're going to observe it on the 25th because it's the weekend. So at 11 a.m., we're again gathering anybody who would like to participate in that. And similar format, no program. It's just whoever has a prayer to share for peace and the elimination of nuclear weapons is invited. I have been sending that out as a flyer, so you can just check your emails. And then, I don't know, June, if you want to say anything. Right now, there's a little bit of iffiness, but October 2nd, there's going to be, hopefully it's going to be on October 2nd, a Protect Our Oceans March. And I'm going to ask June if she wants to share the details of that.
Thank you, Rosemary. Yes, October 2nd, we will have a march, if possible, for Protect Our Ocean. You have might heard about that Japanese government and TEPCO, Tokyo Electric Power Company, are thinking of releasing radioactive water from Fukushima in 2023. And it affects our lives, and not only small creatures in the sea, but entire planet. So we want to stop it. And this march will start around 10:30 to 11 from Bryant Park, and march to Dag Hammarskjöld Plaza around 12 noon. So if you don't want to walk, you can just come to Dag Hammarskjöld Plaza. But because of the General Assembly at the UN, we haven't heard from Park office yet. So I will give you more information after we got the permission. But thank you, and I hope to see you there.
Mm-hmm. And the last one I can say, well, Doretta already told us October 23rd, Pax Christi Metro New York's Fall Assembly. But before that, October 7th is the anniversary of the war in Afghanistan. And War Resisters League is hosting something then that we are looking to have from Ground Zero to Wall Street, although the route may be extended a little bit because there have been few suggestions about starting at the ferry or including the ferry because there'll be more people there, very practical reason. And somebody even suggested going as far as City Hall. I don't know that it would go that far, but it would be a midday walk and an opportunity to share information and try to, again, get the message out to end endless wars and also to protect the planet, making that connection that Doretta mentioned. The speaker at the Fall Assembly will be talking about between the military and climate change or the environment in general. So lots and lots happening and lots of opportunities. And I'm going to say now, thank you. Thank you to all of you for being here. Thanks especially to those who did share. And thanks to Pax Christi Metro New York for providing the Zoom link. They're the one with the account. So they co-sponsored in that way. And then let me just share what I hope you'll pray along with me in your minds, kind of commitment of what we can hopefully do going forward. Today, I will live in peace with my God, my neighbor, and myself. I will bring peace to my patch of this earth. Today, I will believe that world peace is possible. I will remember that hope is the most important gift I can give my world. Today, I will not be party to pessimism nor join the indifferent. Today, I will be happy. I will remember that my joy is up to me. I will carry my confidence to all I touch this day. Today, I will love my enemies. I will pray for them. I will try to see our differences from their point of view. Today, I will disarm myself of rage by extending my hand in help and forgiveness. Today, I will know that peace is the child of justice, that peace is more than the absence of war. Today, I will plant a seed of justice in this global village, in my city, in my neighborhood, in my family, and in my heart. Today, I will pray for peace for all those with whom I come into contact. Today, I will test my love of peace by doing one act for peace. And this is a Christian prayer, so I hope you'll forgive me. Today, I will stand with Christ, the peacemaker, and I think each could add their own peacemakers to that. So thank you all again for being here and for making this happen. It was kind of just a chance that worked out, I think, and I'm very grateful to all of you.